Hi, John Salazar here with Regina Johnson. Apologies, we were having some technical difficulties this morning, so this is going to be a recording. We always like to do it live to get feedback if anybody has any questions or comments. So today we're just going to be recording this one, but we want to thank you all for joining us during these conversations. And today's the last one, so I'm excited about that.
All done.
Yeah.
We're on the home stretch, more than the home stretch. Reading day tomorrow, end of semester, end of the year. And what an interesting year it has been.
Yeah.
My cynical laugh.
And I won't even say, when I say interesting year, I'm not just talking about the academic year. I mean, we can go back to where we were at the beginning of May.
Last year.
Yeah. My goodness. I'm excited. I'm excited for the fact for our seniors, they actually here at Monmouth College, we are able to offer an opportunity for an in-person graduation ceremony, which I'm excited about. They actually get to socially distance, but walk a stage, right? I'm really glad we were able to give that to our graduates. So I'm excited. Things have turned a little bit more back to normal, but it's definitely
a new normal. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I have found myself in my feels at different varying times the last few weeks, just because of the loss. At the end of the day, there's still a certain amount of loss and mourning that I think most people are experiencing, even though there is, there's a lot of joy in the fact that we get to graduate this year's class of seniors. Last year's class of seniors, for me particularly, were incredibly special, knowing that they were the first group that I had come in with. So, to be on that journey with some of those young men and women and not get that ending, that finality of walking across the stage and those emotions, it's sad. It's sad. And, but I mean, lots of positive things that we get to have that graduation this year. In addition, I think we have to recognize that there has also been a great deal of, loss and sadness and disappointment that has come, for us as a campus community. It would be remiss to say that I still at moments am still processing, especially as we very quickly come upon a summer swim season for my daughter. The not having Coach Burek this summer is going to put some increasing finality on his passing due to COVID. And not to mention the civil and social unrest, right? The larger global conflicts that we have felt and have been touched by on campus. So this year has, when I think of grief, the stages of grief, I definitely think that there is in the rejoice, there's still that process. So I got to put that in there.
Yeah. And there's still work to do. I was actually having some conversations with some folks last week, I think, about Derek Chauvin, the Derek Chauvin trial. And, some people thinking that, oh, well, he was found, guilty. And so we're done, no, not at all. That's a first step if you want. And there's so much more that can be done there that it must be done and be talked about. And we need to have these conversations, difficult ones, respectful ones, but we need to be talking about this. I think that's part of the hope that we can be having these difficult conversations, and hopefully that's how this all came out. Hopefully we can continue to have these conversations, because this is just the beginning. This is our way of reaching out to our constituents, our faculty, staff, and students, alumni, if they want to jump in, to talk about important issues that they may be affecting, the nation, others outside of Monmouth, but they affect us here. They affect us today, and they will affect us tomorrow. And we need to be discussing that. I'm not going to stand here and say that, oh, we've always gotten it right at Monmouth. We haven't. We have a
No,
lot of
no.
work to do. But as an institution, I'm happy. I was happy to hear about some of the things that steps we've been taking as an institution to begin addressing these systemic issues on our campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes without actually, I it there as somebody who is part of, the DEI working group, and knowing that we have pushed the needle forward, I still, personally and professionally realize that there are a lot of individuals out there that are still not yet prepared to have hard talks. And the reason, and I know that this maybe is counter to how some feel. I'm a big believer that we have to call and invite people in before we call people out. And I think that we are, because of all of the ups and downs and lows and everything, I still think we are very instinctively stuck in that call out, right? We want to say, oh, well, you did this wrong, and I can do it better. Well, no. I think that's the biggest mistake that most make, is we think that we have it right. Right. And you and I both have had this had this conversation multiple times. And Jake,
Yes,
when he was still here, yes, we've had that. There's a lot of self work that has to go into diversity and equity work. And if you skip that stage of self work as you are doing external work, you actually do additional harm, right? You do additional harm in the process. And I would be, I'd be lying to say that sometimes I have to say, okay, I can't respond. And I can't respond because I know that my initial response, my knee-jerk response, is going to be one from a place that might show my implicit bias, right? And might show those things that I, as a person, a woman, a person of color, have, right? And so we have to reflect and think about really where people are at before we try to fix everything, because maybe it's not them that needs fixed. Maybe it's us that needs fixed. But yet we're very quick to always make the assumption that other people that need the fixing, right? And that other people need the adjusting, and they're wrong, and that you don't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And even when you're trying to be helpful, when it's time for a call out, if you will, it doesn't necessarily have to be you doing it. I think sometimes we all try to be in the spotlight, when sometimes you don't need to be in the spotlight, but you sure need to be supporting the people who are there, right? I think I talked a little bit about that back when we were talking with Ed Wimp about activism.
Yeah, that's yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes it's just best to be there and stand with others to show your presence, but you don't have to take the stage and take over. I see far too much of that, and I always cringe a little bit when I see others kind of speaking on behalf of other people. That I'm like, you can take a step back and let other folks discuss this particular concern. I try to be very cognizant of that for myself, but I also get, again, I have a lot of work to do for me. I make mistakes, all that. So I still try. I'll be honest. One of my things that I like to throw out there that I continue to struggle with is correct gender pronouns when I'm working with members of the LGBTQI community. Especially the they them, right? As someone who was very particular in writing, right? The they them, I'm like, plural. Okay, I guess when I'm talking about someone in the singular, it's a tough one for me.
It is. And John, but your example is a perfect example, because if we think back to when we had our guest Eddie Moore during our panel for Martin Luther King series, our Martin Luther King series conference series, Dr. Moore who is one of the leading experts, right, in the anti-racist movement in our area or in our region. And he openly said in that space that that's a struggle, right? We all have work to do. And I remember him saying, I have more work to do. I have to do better in this space, because if I don't, then I stay where I don't have an understanding, and that lack of connection, and I'm not doing the right things by the people that need my support the most, right? And that's something I think that's been critical. And it's been some time since you and I have discussed this. And I remember back to when I first came back to Monmouth, I think it was our larger group discussion, is that, we often, people of color, which is not observed by the external community, we get stuck in our own fights, right? We get stuck in our own plight and our own marginalized communities, and don't really do a very good job of making that intersected connection to other identities. And we talked about it a few weeks ago when we discussed intersectionality, that you cannot eliminate that you as a Latino man have multiple layers, right? Or me as a woman of color who has a Black father and a German mother, that there is not intersections there, right? And so what does that mean? What does that mean about my response or your response to certain situations? And sometimes we get stuck in that one silo, and we miss the cross and the intersectionality and that fluidity that goes back and forth. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yes.
Or maybe three, or maybe four, right?
Yes. And I just appreciate when people recognize that, and they take the time to recognize that we are all of who we are, and not try to just quickly go to putting you in a silo or in a category. I appreciate that. I think others do too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when we, this session today was going to be relatively short and sweet, and just a reflection of where we started and where we've come. Our conversation in November about how can we lead the way and help promote healthy conversations across difference, and provide a space where examples can be given and share education. Because at the end of the day, we can only be better if we are better. And a lot of being better starts with educating ourselves. You and I were just talking about this beforehand. We live in a day and age where social media and the news, right? They're so entangled. They're entangled in bias one way or another, right, left, and there's a lot of untruth out there. And, I will share this really quick, growing up in a space with an immigrant, my grandmother, having grown up in World War II Germany, we always had the news on at dinner growing up. Always. And that was something as an adult, it took me, a young adult, having my own space, my own house, all of those things, it took me a long time to get away from. But you had to have the news on because you had to be informed, right? Because when you grow up in an area where misinformation leads to the execution of 6 million people, you have to know what's going on, right? More forward to you and I being adults. And now it is harder than ever to know where the truth is, right? And so there is a certain amount of due diligence that has to be done by each individual person to really process through, is this true? Do I know the whole story? Do I see the whole picture? And do I have all the answers to render an opinion, to place a judgment, or to share or spread that information, right?
Yeah.
It looks so different now than it did.
Yes.
And it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's on, I'm stealing a line from Stephanie from last week and even before, but it's on us, right? It's really on each of us. If you are going to do DE&I work, and if you're going to have that inner activist come in, come out of you, and even Ed said it when we had him in our space, you really have to know. Right? You really have to know all sides and all versions. And so I think that our climate on campus has taught us a lot about that this year.
Yes. And the need for it, the need for those conversations. And my hope is that students will, both the graduating seniors as well as other students that have been here for a while and they've interacted, that they go back home, take those interactions with each other and with their professors, and they have them with others, and they see the growth that they themselves have made. We talked about this a couple times before, how oftentimes the students don't see the growth, they don't see the development while they're here, and then they go back home and then it's a different world. The way that they're treated, the way they see the world, the way they understand it, that's when they kind of get hit with it. In their first job, after graduation, right? That's my hope, that they go and they are better people, they're better prepared for the future and to have difficult conversations because they've had them here, they've had the opportunity to discuss them. That's what my hope is for. And
no, absolutely. And you are incredibly spot on. And it's ironic that you bring that up because I had that conversation with a senior yesterday in my office. And it was a reflective conversation of their 4 years. This, of course, is my second class of seniors that I started with as freshmen. And, as the student and I were having a dialogue, we were talking about, a couple of very specific situations. And I looked at this student and I said, I could have unpacked a lot of things with you when you came to me asking for certain things and working with certain students, right? And there were moments when you were going through some of those scenarios, you were really frustrated with me because you were looking for me to maybe solve it a little bit for you. And I also had some background information on a few of those situations that I didn't give you. And I said, and in hindsight, do you understand why I did not give you all of the tools in the toolbox? And the student said, yes. And even though it sucked, and even though it could have done me, it obviously could have saved me a little bit of having to get dirty and having to experience some of these or this. And it was a particular situation about a particular person. It maybe would have changed how I experienced that person, but I needed to understand how to learn and navigate through difficult, right? And to navigate through managing and dealing with difficult people and difficult scenarios. Had you just given it to me, then I would have been, I would have not known. I wouldn't have recognized, these were their words, I would not have recognized the signs and I would not have recognized the process. Now I see those things. And, and I think that that's so important, and I will openly say, and I have this quote on my desk here, we're in a hurry sometimes to save people from the traumas and the tragedies that we've gone through. Particularly, I'm going to throw that out there, particularly as people of color, right? I have this innate thing that I want to save people sometimes. But in reality, we have to let people experience certain levels of heartache. And going back to that conversation with that student yesterday, I said, if this person that you were dealing with, if I was worried that they were going to, hide your body in the backyard, I would have, we would have had a different conversation. I would not have done that to you, but you had to learn what it was like to work with this person. You had to learn what it was like to navigate that space. I needed you to see it firsthand because sometimes that's the only way we're going to fully understand it.
Absolutely.
And you and I, and I even see that as a mother, right? I want to sometimes save, and then sometimes I realize, no, I can't save. You got to go. right? You've got to experience what it means to lose. And because if you don't, then it doesn't make winning sweeter.
And it doesn't prepare the student, right?
No.
Because I've had those conversations, tough accountability conversations and decisions, and it sucks. Mm-hmm. I will tell from my perspective, I do student conduct. Man,
you're the mean guy.
Yeah, I'm a mean guy. When
you are, but no, I'm joking.
I hate it. I really do hate it, and I don't hate the work. I hate the difficult conversations that I know are tough for the students, because I don't want to make it tough, but I certainly want to help a student develop and learn so that they're the better person for it, so that in the future they don't make the same mistake when they're an adult in a particular situation. They don't do the same types of actions that'll really get them in hot water. Losing a job, losing a career, losing a spouse, losing a relationship.
Yeah.
I want them to be prepared. And that's a tough way to go. When you're just, students don't always get that. I've actually had some staff members in my past who have come up to me. I've had to hold them accountable for different things, and they joked, and they came up to me, and at first I remember who they were. I remember how it went the last time, kind of a thing, and it was a different conversation. It was like, hey, I get it, like I totally understand, and thanks for that. And first I was very thankful that was how that conversation went, but second, just kind of gets you. You just don't get that much. I've joked about this before, I think with Jake McLean, and before I was like, you do that kind of work and you don't always get the ring at the end, or the coin, the Monmouth coin at the end during graduation, right? You just don't. You don't have that person that says, thank you so much for holding me accountable. Yeah, you don't. But you see it later. You see it down the road after they graduate, after they leave. And that's what my hope is.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And you and I have talked about this over the years. It's hard to do a conduct role. It's hard to be where you are versus where I am.
Where you are is very difficult too.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I have to be the enforcer too, right? Sometimes the enforcement comes from me, and you're actually the person that's like, wait a minute, Regina's not bad. She just has to, you understand why she's coming from this angle, right? Yeah. And so, and you're right. I mean, all of our jobs are hard and easy in different ways. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there is, there is no greater satisfaction than to see people succeed. And in hindsight, whether it's been my time in ed or my time, outside of ed, I love seeing people win, right? That's the kind of competitor I am. I really enjoy seeing people win. I especially see people that I care about win, especially when they've worked really, really hard. But with winning, that loss comes into play. I mean, I've been here 5 years, and I hope it's, I hope it's another 10 or longer before we lose another student. In reflection, I remember, making that phone call to you, letting you know that we lost one of our football players a few years back. And, so with seeing students succeed, we also sometimes see loss. And we see students go through really hard emotional times. And, that's why community is important. That's why having hard conversations is important. That's why being a good ally is important. I mean, we could go down the list. So, we are at about 20 minutes in, and we said that this was going to be our recap, our year in review. We will come back next year or this fall with, campus conversations again. We appreciate every person who took time out of their day to be our guests, from our very first guest with Raymond Doswell, Ed Wimp, Tiana, and of course our friend Stephanie Kincaid. And so, am I missing anybody? Who am I missing?
I mean, Avi Minor was also.
Oh yes, Abby, and we both of us would be remiss if we didn't give Abby a shout out for the tenacity that she's displayed. She and Brenda this year through their
What a
roles.
year to be the student body president.
What a year to be the student body president and vice president. So all of Scott's Student Senate, Joe Donor, Gabby Modu. We are thankful for our students. We're thankful for where we are. It's been hard. Lessons have been learned. And, we look forward to a fall 2021 and spring 2022 that hopefully continues to bring us more of a new normal.
Yes.
Absolutely. So with that, it is not officially summer, but I am saying happy summer, happy breaks, enjoy the time off to everyone. And most importantly, congratulations to our class of 2021. We're incredibly proud of you for weathering this storm that has been COVID-19 and all of its many moving parts.
Absolutely.
Here is to new beginnings, right?
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you all in the fall. Bye-bye.
Bye.